ready to go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to this Wye Valley AONB Joint Advisory Committee meeting on today, Monday, the 7th of March. Welcome to all those who I can see online and those on the telephone and by other means. Welcome to you all. Right, first of all, can I, Richard, have apologies for absence, please? Thank you.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Hardwick, Catherine Grimstead, Adam Taylor, Gareth Parry, Bob Hesketh, Rob Niblett, George Peterkin and Councillor Hale.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Right, moving on to my announcements. First of all, I think we have Liz O'Sullivan in the room somewhere, and welcome to her, and if she'd like to join us, perhaps she might wish to make any comments under item 8, if you all agree. Now, next, I would like to make this announcement with regard to Sue Middleton. Just a shade over 800 years ago, since Henry III appointed verderers to protect the Forest of Dean, the first woman has been elected to the role. Colford-born Sue Middleton was elected at a county court of people eligible to vote in Gloucestershire on the 1st of March. Can we, Andrew, send a letter of congratulations to Sue? She worked with us in the Overlooking the Rye project for quite a number of years, and we're really pleased to see that she's been honoured in this way. Thank you. Right, if we can move on to item 5, please, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. We look at page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Is it your wish that I sign those at some stage as a true record of that meeting that we held on the 1st of November, a while ago now? Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are you all content with those minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Right, thank you so much. Thank you. Right. Moving on then to item 6, the AONB Unit 2022-23 work programme. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's usually this time of year we put our full proposed work programme for the year to the JAC. Unfortunately, currently we're still awaiting the allocation of our budget for next financial year. We're hearing promising things from both Welsh Government and DEFRA, but nothing confirmed, and so we're not able to set a clear budget, and therefore similarly can't really outline a full work programme. So what I've put in is a draft work programme which outlines our main aspirations, and obviously we will confirm as what we can when budgets are confirmed, and we will do as much as we can depending on the resources when we've fully identified what they are. So it's obviously frustrating in a sense because there's lots we could be planning and arranging now. But similarly, as I said, the noises coming out of Welsh Government and DEFRA are very promising, but until I've had those in writing and confirmed, I can't do much more than just lay out the aspirational programme in front of you. So I'm happy to answer any questions on specifics within that, but I'd ask members to endorse the draft work programme, and I will obviously let you know as soon as we know when we can confirm things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Just 1 second. Councillor McFarlane has very helpfully put in the chat bar. Could any attendees who are anonymous please identify themselves? Perhaps we'll move over to you, Ashley, for number 1, that I know that you're out there, and any others that are not on the screen. Thank you very much. Come in, Ashley. Do we have any others besides Ashley? Do you know, Andrew or Richard?
Ashley is, as far as I can see, is identified on my list. Then I presume one is Liz O'Sullivan, and I'm not sure who the other is.
I think the other one is Richard Gethin.
Richard
was having
Richard
problems.
Getting here.
Okay, yep. And Liz, if you're there, would you just speak up just so we can...
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay, excellent. That's...
I see that Barry Durkin, he was on screen earlier, but now has switched his camera off to save bandwidth. But anybody else that we need to identify, Richard or Andrew? I think that's it.
No, I think it was Liz who's just come up as anonymous. So
okay, and Matt Feekins has just joined us, Councillor Feekins, by the look of it. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to any comments with regard to the AONB work programme, please, members. Chris, did you want to speak?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you,
you're muted, Chris.
Am I still muted?
Fine now.
Okay. My only comment, and it's an observation to the work programme, is whether we should be prioritising the natural health of the River Wye. We all know about the pollution and the loss of wildlife and the decline in wildlife, and I just wonder whether there is a possibility to actually make more of an investment in the work programme to helping the Wye recover its health.
Andrew?
Yes. So, I mean, certainly this isn't a specifically prioritised list. I mean, I suppose there's an element that some things lower down the list are possibly of lesser importance or lesser weight in terms of staff resources and things. Yes, inevitably, the health of the river is a key concern, and we will definitely be working strongly with all the other partners throughout the Wye catchment on whatever action we're able to do within the AONB and the area of our influence. So yes, there's certainly no intention for that not to be the case. As I said, within the resources and our remit, we will do all we can.
Okay, I just can't see a reference to it specifically in the work programme, but maybe I've missed that. And I think it should have a subject heading of its own. Yes,
under the nature recovery and landscape connectivity, actually, it is the bottom line of that box. But also our species action plan. The riparian habitats are one of the key focus, and in fact, we've got ranunculus down as one of the key species in that as an indicator for the health, for the health of the river. So yes, it's written in there and it's spread throughout. But yes, you're right. We could do better in identifying and prioritising that.
Okay, thank you. I've got more on this, Anne, but I'll save it for later in the agenda.
Okay, thank you for raising it, Chris. Really important. Thank you for that. If members, no more members wish to speak.
I've got my hand up, please, and it's Yolandi.
I beg your pardon, I couldn't see it. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, Andrew. Andrew, I've just got 2 questions in your work program. Firstly, it's about how do you monitor the use of the management plan and planning applications? Because I know that we had a really good conversation at the last Joint Advisory Committee about planning applications and how, and we recognise that you haven't got the current resources to look at every planning application. But so I'm just interested to see how you do that. And the other one is that in the nature recovery section, I know that light pollution is in the management plan, but it's actually not picked up here, and I just think that it's a real missed opportunity. I know that CPRE have been doing their star count over the last week, and there's been quite a lot more publicity, not only in the press but also like in Permaculture magazine by Bug Life. So I just thought it might be a real opportunity for us to strengthen that, because I think there are still residents out there who actually haven't that need educating, and we could do that quite simply. Thanks.
Yes, if I come just respond to that. I mean, in fact, they're both tied up in the same aspiration. I think within that is we're hoping, and I do mention it in the body of the report, we're hoping that we will have enough resources to ideally employ a part-time planning officer, and one of my aspirations for them would be to do more fuller monitoring of the planning applications, because at the moment it is very ad hoc, our monitoring. We monitor the planning applications, but we don't monitor the impact and outcome of them. And that's something which a full-time planning officer would, or an employed planning officer would certainly be part of their role. And that's similar for light pollution work. And we have been promoting. We're promoting the first Wales Dark Skies Week a couple of weeks ago, and have been promoting the CPRE star count and things over the last few weeks. So we're picking up more on that. But yes, you're right. It's not identified as a sort of a work stream in itself. And again, that's currently because we haven't got the resources. We are always opportunistic. If the chance arises and we can make use of somebody else's resources, then we'll certainly do so, and look to promote that further. But at the moment, yes, we haven't got it written in as a sort of mainline task, but we will certainly look to do that in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Can I call on Paul Simmons now? Councillor Simmons, please.
Yeah, just a quick one, Andrew. It's my usual one about plotting some resources against the activities, just so we know roughly how many full-time equivalents or person days or whatever we're trying to commit to each of these things, just to make sure it's realistic, that kind of reality check. So I don't know where. Obviously, we've spoken about it a couple of times, but I don't know where we've got with that.
Yes, I mean, usually I would have hoped to have been able to do that this time around, but as I said, because we really do not know the extent of our resources for next year, it becomes an even more impossible task. As I said, I'm hoping we get sufficient uplift that means we'll be able to employ at least another part-time post, which we probably direct at planning. but that would free up certainly part of my time, part of Sharon's times, finance and admin. We're currently recruiting a farming and protected landscapes officer at the moment, which Nick Critchley has been covering full time on that. So when his time gets freed up, he'll be able to get back to his day job. So we're really in a moment of flux at the moment that I could allocate some numbers there, but it would really be a completely speculative exercise at the moment. So yes, I would dearly like to have a defined program and be able to allocate my secure staff to it, but at the moment we're just not in that position.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Unless there's any other comments, can I just suggest that we endorse the plan, the draft AONB work unit plan for 2022 to 23.
Gone up.
I beg pardon, sorry, I'm not getting these hands very easily. Who is it? Who's raised a hand, please? Oh, Ben Nash. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Carry on.
All right, I take it off.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, as I said before, that I take it that we can endorse this plan that Andrew's prepared for us. Thank you. And moving on then to item 7, which is the Glover review and government response. We've got several suggestions here, but perhaps if you can take this, Andrew, through the review. Thank you so far.
Yes, so we now have the government's response to the Glover review published in January, and we're in a 12-week consultation period which goes until the 9th of April. The National Association have been working hard behind the scenes, both with lead officers and partnership chairmen, and working with National Parks England and Natural England on and other environmental NGOs and other parties to consolidate a coherent response to the consultation. And I circulated over the weekend or Friday evening a presentation that was made to AONB chairs late last week. That starts to show how the National Association's response is coalescing, and so I suppose the government's response is not as impressive as we would have hoped, and doesn't follow all of the Glover report recommendations. Does fulfill a lot of them, or pursues a lot of them, but in terms of AONBs, we don't feel they're reaching the ambition that's certainly Glover set out, and also very questionable whether they're committing the resources necessary to deliver the ambition that is set out. So in order to take this forward, I'm closely feeding into the National Association's discussions and debates, and I would propose that we align ourselves closely with the National Association's response, but I would welcome either a small task group to help us draw up our considerations to the government's response, or I can align our response with the national associations and just confirm that with, say, the chair and vice chair before submitting them. And of course, would encourage every other organisation and individual indeed to respond to the consultation as well before the 9th of April.
Yeah.
So attached is the full questions, but they're a little bit random, and they don't really go to the nub of some of the issues. So I would propose that we respond to what we want to comment on rather than specifically to the questions asked in the consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I please bring in Chris?
Thank you, Anne. Forest Dean District Council has its response to the government's response in its cabinet papers to be decided upon and approved at the cabinet meeting this Thursday. I'll send these on to you, Andrew, in due course. In the next couple of days. I don't think they're publicly displayed at the moment, so it's in the public domain, so there's no problem there. We have four main points. First of all, the government's response is silent on the Forest Dean's ambitions to expand AONB designation to its own territory and land. And this has been going on for, goodness knows, 60, 70 years. So we are very disappointed. Words don't express the real disappointment we have that there is no mention of that in the expansion of the AONB family. Secondly, there is a risk, and this may come from a misunderstanding, that AONBs are not islands where nature can be recovered. The Lawson report taught us quite clearly that nature needs to be bigger, better and better connected. And it's those connections. In the Forest of Dean, we have as much land that is protected for species that lies outside the AONB and will therefore get no investment from the Glover's review. And as we all know, even the Wye Valley AONB benefits from its links, its landscape links and its habitat links with other areas that lie outside to maintain its integrity. So that is probably one of the most important critiques we have of the government's response. It seems to be a lack of understanding that we might be an island, but we to our detriment. The other one is that, and you've already mentioned it, that there is a lack of investment. There is a lack of value for nature. The fact that we can't put out a work programme until we get funding, and funding's on a one-year basis, that is not a sensible way or rational way of actually benefiting AONBs and the natural landscape as well. So the lack of investment, the lack of more resources put into the government's response is a source of concern. And then finally, many of our responses we couldn't actually make because we lacked the detail in the proposals. And if the devil is in the detail, and without that detail, we can't fully respond as we would wish. So there are some points that we've made, and I'll send them on to you. And I certainly ask that we respond as an AONB in our own right, because that lack of investment historically has led to the condition of the Wye as it is at the moment. And unless they realise that, then other AONBs as well will begin to degrade simply because there is no value, or that there is no perceived value in looking after nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on to Colin from the Gloucestershire Association of Parishes and Town Councils. Thank you, Colin.
Well, I think parish and town councils certainly would agree with a lot of what Chris has just had to say. There is a view, certainly amongst some parish councils and town councils, that this consultation is very much a sort of political correctness type consultation. I won't say that the questions are totally loaded, but they certainly, shall we say, somewhat directional. I mean, for instance, if you look at, there's a question 10 which said, should AONBs have a second purpose relating to connecting people and places equivalent to that of national parks? Well, I thought we did actually. Maybe it's not strictly formally, but certainly informally. And then it goes on to say, should a strengthened second purpose of protected landscapes follow the proposals set out in Chapter 3 to improve connections to all parts of society with our protected landscapes? We are getting the impression that the government's idea of protected landscapes is not much different from the idea of countryside parks, and certainly the attitude of some people who, shall I say, have come in from the towns during the COVID crisis. That is very much the attitude which we see being displayed by them in our parishes, particularly in the Cotswolds, and I'm sure also within the Wye Valley as well. So, quite frankly, our view is that this consultation falls somewhat short of what it should do, and it certainly falls short of what was the intentions via the report from which this is supposed to be a consultation. So, you know, it's a bit 5 out of 10 of her effort as we see it at the moment.
Thank you for those comments. Moving on to Councillor David Wheeler from the Forest of Dean. Thank you, David. Come on, unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm
It's
trying
unlike
to.
you.
I know.
Thank you.
So it won't surprise members to know that I agree with the points made by Chris McFarlane and the Forest of Dean District Council, but I wanted to just raise one particular issue, because at the top we're asked to test the proposal of renaming AONBs as national landscapes. And I have some real concerns with that. Notwithstanding the fact that absolutely nobody in the public can remember the order of the letters of AONB, it does actually say what we're actually about: areas of outstanding, and that's an important word, outstanding natural beauty. Now, national landscapes doesn't say anything about outstanding, and it also doesn't say anything about natural. You could have a national landscape that consisted of the remains of the slag tips of coal mining areas. They would still be national landscapes, but they would not be natural ones. And I think that there is a need to maintain that issue of naturalness. And I don't know whether Andrew has a view on that. I mean, for instance, we do know that there are certain areas within the Wye Valley which are excluded from the AONB because they are towns. There would be no justification for that if we were a national landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I can't see any more hands. Is there anyone else wanting to raise any issues, please?
Richard Getting here from the Hereford Association of Local Councils. I fully endorse David's last points about not renaming the AONBs. It would not make any sense. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Andrew, together with the Forest of Dean's comments, which are going to be forwarded to us, are members content with what we've heard today, or do you think we ought to set up a task force, which will have to be pretty quick and yeah, Yolande?
I think that's up to Andrew whether he would like a group to help him, because he's pretty tight with the resources. And I think, you know, as I put in the chat, I'd be happy to help wherever I can if he wants that help. And I'm sure some other members will as well. We can pull together. I think it's fantastic what the Forest of Dean has done. But yeah, I'm willing to put my, you know, hat in the ring if he needs some extra resource.
Anyone else volunteering if this happens? Colin and Chris.
Yes, if that's the case, I will volunteer as well. If Andrew wants us, that is.
Yeah. Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's great. I would welcome some support. A sounding board is probably as much as anything. Because yes, I am stretched for time, and therefore coordinating a large task group will be as time consuming as yes, as anything else. So, but having a small select group that I can use as a sounding board would be excellent and most useful.
Would you envisage meeting on Teams or in your office, or?
Yes, yeah, or it may just be emailing something out and saying, can you, you know, any comments in 2 or 3 days, sort of thing. Yes, we may be able to meet on Teams, but yes.
Any other volunteers then for this task force or this? Yolande, Colin, Chris, and David, did you volunteer? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. But meanwhile, the recommendations are on page 17. You all got a copy of those in front of you. Can we just endorse those recommendations, please? Thank you. I can't see any. That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Andrew, sorry, any comments you wish to make?
Yes, if I just come back on the national landscapes
of course.
Issue name, you'll be won't be surprised to hear that opinions are divided throughout the AONB world on the proposal, and there are two things I think to understand and bear in mind in it. I mean, I would be the first to agree that area of outstanding natural beauty says what it is on the tin, but similarly I remain eternally frustrated when people get the acronym wrong, but I also understand that people have learnt their alphabet going MNOPQ, and then we throw in an acronym which swaps some of those letters round. So it's we're going against the grain of primary school learning, I think. So and as Ashley pointed out to me the other day, even if people mispronounce the acronym, at least they know, or they think they know, what they're talking about. So it's better that they know what the AONB is and mispronounce it than don't know what it is at all. But the two key issues in terms of the government's consultation are that the proposal is for the national landscape brand or name or whatever to be effectively like a trading name rather than a legal name. So areas of outstanding natural beauty will remain areas of outstanding natural beauty in law, and so therefore they will remain areas of outstanding natural beauty, but would be potentially referred to as national landscapes, which puts them on a par with national parks, or gives them a sort of a parity with national parks. That's the idea behind that change, really. I mean, there is some argument to say if we've got the same purposes as national parks, which, as we've just said, there's a proposal to give us a secondary purpose the same as national parks, then why aren't we just called national parks? And while we don't want the planning powers or the planning authorities that national parks have, we could have everything else, and along with the sizable budgets that national parks have that AONBs don't have, given that the entire AONB budget for 34 AONBs in England is smaller than several individual national parks. There's a genuine need to review and reformulate the funding across national parks and AONBs. And again, that needs to be set in the context of, we don't want to rob the national parks of money. We need more money to do the job as well as the national parks. In fact, we probably, well, Glover argued or recognised that we do a job as good as, if not better than, national parks on a lot less money. So that there's that context of a renaming or rebranding AONBs, but not losing the truth that we are areas of outstanding natural beauty. The other thing is that Glover's proposal was that we be given new powers, new resources, and strengthened and renamed national landscapes. So the core of the National Association's argument is that, yes, when we've got those new powers and that new funding and that new resources and new purposes, then we will be something different, and therefore it would be legitimate to call us something different, and calling us national landscapes would make sense in that respect. Yes, we're still areas of outstanding natural beauty, but we are considerably more empowered and enhanced than, let's say, the current incarnation. But that there's no point renaming if we're not being anything more or anything different. So there's a sort of almost a bargaining there that we're not going to rename unless we're given the resources to be something different and worth being called something else. Although legally still, yes, we would be areas of outstanding natural beauty. So that's the context that I think is helpful for members to understand.
Thank you, Colin. You wanted to come in here, and then Ashley.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's just a point, Andrew. I mean, is there not a danger that with this idea of calling things national landscapes, we might set up confusion between that title and the Natural England already used title of landscape character areas? Because, I mean, well, not all of the country, but significant parts of the country are already designated in that suite of documentation that Natural England possesses. I mean, for instance, 105 is the Forest of Dean, 106 is the Severn and the coastal plain going up the river to Severn. So, are we not potentially making a problem for ourselves by the government having this grand idea of national landscapes?
Yeah, there are some inherent problems, not least inconsistency in the Glover review that said that the collective name for national parks and AONBs or renamed national landscapes should be national landscapes, which doesn't quite make sense, and the new National Landscape Service would cover national parks and AONBs. So there's we're a designate or brand for a designation, but also a collective noun for a group of designations potentially. Which, so yes, there are inconsistencies, and in the current concepts of the terminology. But yes, the relationship to the national character areas and things like that would definitely need sorting out. I think there's a considerable amount of work to be done around the renaming or the rebranding, certainly.
Thank you, Andrew. Yolande. Oh, sorry,
I think Ashley was, yeah,
first.
Ashley was before me.
Beg your pardon. Ashley, we haven't forgotten you, really, we haven't. Ashley, are you there? Yolande, come in and then I'll draw on Ashley in a minute, okay?
Okay, thank you, Anne. I was just, Andrew, James Bissett wrote something in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. I just wanted to alert you of that, his offer. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Ashley, are you there? Oh. Ashley. Can you see anything that I can't see, Richard?
No, Chair. It looks as if we've lost
Hello?
contact with. Oh,
Oh,
Hello?
gosh, very good, Ashley. Yes, hi.
Right. Okay.
The floor's yours.
Oh, thanks very much. Well, I'm glad I had a conversation the other day with Andrew about this. And the other thing that, apart from the acronym they twisted around to AONB, I find that rather funny, because it shows that they understand, they know all about it. One of the things I've encountered over the years is a rather haughty attitude by quite a number of people that don't belong to the AONB family, and that's they refer to it as not being natural, because mankind has altered the landscapes and so on to such an extent that it can't be regarded as natural. And my answer to that has been quite simply that if you think that you're not natural, then what planet have you come from? Mankind is as much natural as any other species on this planet, and therefore the fact anything that man does, good or bad, is natural. It comes from a natural body, and that usually shuts them up, because I insist on pushing the idea that some of us, they're not natural. If they think they're not natural, what planet are they from? And it sort of it just finishes the conversation, if you like. But it's something that's been going on for years, and I don't think that Port Talbot would regard itself as a national. What was the second word? National landscape. The argument about this will continue to be a bit heated, I expect. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ashley. Right, Andrew, will you be copying us into your review before you actually send it off, just for any further comments?
Yes, I will. I'll certainly bounce it around that sort of task group or sounding board, and yes, and share it as widely as I can.
Okay.
And hopefully that will also inspire others, individuals or organisations to plagiarise that and send in their own submissions as well.
Good. Thank you for all your comments there. Been valued, I'm sure, Andrew. Thank you. We're moving on to item 8 now, and although you're out there, Liz, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. We know that you're there somewhere, I think. Andrew, would you like to take us through this item firstly? Thank you.
Yes, so this in a sense, Chris was, Councillor McFarlane was asking where the government's recognition of the Forest of Dean as a potential AONB, and others, and also in response to Liz O'Sullivan's piece that we examined at the previous JAC on extension eastwards of the AONB. This item relates to effectively what the government has is doing in relation to that, and it's tasked Natural England with coming up with a new map fit for the 21st century on reviewing the countryside and what areas could or should be given a some sort of recognition, and that's either as further designations for AONBs and national parks, or possibly new designations or new recognitions. So Natural England has just started this process, and they're calling it the All England Assessment for new landscapes or new landscape designations, and they've actually commissioned land use consultants and Gillespie's to do the initial scoping for the mapping work. So I attended a workshop recently where was looking run by LUC and Gillespie's, looking at the scope of the work and the potential data sets and national mapping that's available to look at. And we've got another workshop in a week or so, again, drilling down into those data sets. One of the things they're definitely not going to do is modify or change the natural beauty designation criteria. But they are looking at the rest of the country to see what areas show up from a mapping perspective, I think, and from an objective perspective that are, well, let's call them outstanding for the time being, and undesignated and in need of designation. So this work is just starting. I don't know what the full timetable is at the moment for this work, but I can imagine it will take several months, if not longer. And of course, there's already a backlog of announced AONB reviews and designations, which under current circumstances will take Natural England several years to plough through. So I don't know what the prospects are of speeding up their designation and review process itself. But in that context, I just thought it helpful to list and collate and note the requests that we are aware of as an AONB partnership for extensions or adjacent designations, and so I'd list those as the long-standing one to sort of rationalise the Woolhope Dome and the top end of the northern end of the AONB, and take the AONB boundary up to the Markle Ridge, and I believe that's been posited several times in the past, in the 80s and the 90s. And then, as Councillor McFarlane said, the long-standing also proposal to designate the Forest of Dean, and then the proposal that Liz O'Sullivan put forward, or the the group she leads to designate effectively the whole of the original area as outlined in the Hobhouse review, and I attached that map at the end of the paper as well. So that sets the context of this work, and so I think we should welcome this new programme by Natural England, feed into it where we can, and note those existing requests for designation or extension. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Chris, would you like to come in before I bring Liz in, or would you like me to bring Liz in first? I'll bring Liz in then, okay, if you don't mind, and then we'll come over to you, Chris. And Ashley, is that an old hand, or do you wish to come in? Okay, Liz, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much. And it's very interesting to have heard the prior discussion, because the notes that I made today that I thought might be relevant are even more relevant, I think, having heard the concerns, because the two areas that I thought were most relevant to the case for extending the AONB were economic and connectivity. And I think that's missing in the national considerations, and I think it's something that could be drawn on in commenting on the current proposals and on the wider review. And I think the area that we have suggested with the old Hobhouse boundary reinstatement or extension demonstrates those two particular issues, because what is currently happening, particularly, and I can only speak for this eastern side of the area, because there are no designations in this area, and because of the change in the planning legislation, and because of the increased movement of population from urban centres out to rural areas, with the benefit of certainly of the M50 in this area, and the communications that people need to work, and that's only going to extend as the life-work balance and where people work and home working becomes more popular, puts areas like this at tremendous threat. And I don't think you can look at AONBs as some kind of nebulous designation that relates purely to people's appreciation of beauty and what seems to be incorporated in the government's proposals, that sitting out here away from urban centres of population is something that is waiting for them to come and appreciate. I mean, there's also an economy out here. There's an economy which is very largely, for the whole country, based on tourism. It's the biggest industry. And that's been shown with all the impact on hospitality and so on during COVID. And so the connectivity between the economy in urban cities and the economy in rural areas they're not two separate things. And beautiful areas are areas that contribute to that economy. And I don't think that's reflected in any of the discussions at the national level, which is why I wrote to Tony Juniper and tried to expand the argument. And I think it's something that could be, even though this area isn't proposed to be extended, I think it's nonetheless a very good argument as to why the AONB should be extended to the original Hobhouse proposals. And I think it's something that isn't just about extending the boundary of an AONB. It does relate to this whole consideration about whether you call them national landscapes or AONBs or something else. it doesn't really matter in one sense. The issue is a philosophical issue of the degree to which the economy is interconnected, that urban and rural areas and people in urban and rural areas are interconnected. And all of that has an impact on the beauty of our inherited landscape. And if we don't cherish that inherited landscape, then current ways of life are going to impact that landscape. And I think that feeds back then into a very practical sense into the planning system. And I think the role of AONB value in planning decisions is one way in which links all of those things: the economy, development, the economic growth of rural areas, and the preservation or not of the beautiful rural landscapes. I think that's the main point I wanted to make. I mean, the detail of the area that that we proposed for extension, I think is self-evident, and I don't think there've been any changes in the beauty of the landscape since it was first recommended back in 1947. It's self-evident, it's beautiful. You've only got to look at it, and you've only as well got to look at its nature conservation value. And I think that again is something that needs to be fed in somewhere into the consideration, is the what exists by way of survey data for wildlife in this area. It's very patchy as far as I can establish. There is not a fully integrated approach between all the various environmental NGOs as to what should be done with this area. And I think that's another aspect that would feed into that wider consideration of the nature of integration in these areas. So I'm sorry to sort of try to throw the philosophical spanner in the works, but I do think that's very important. That's all I've really got to say, unless anyone wants to ask me questions.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much for your paper last time and for your comments today. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I bring in Chris, please, and then Colin? Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, a couple of points on Andrew's proposal to speak up for the Forest of Dean as an AONB as well. It's really my concern is that the Glover Review is being positioned to help implement the government's planning white paper. The planning white paper seems to want to designate zones for nature protection, zones for development, and zones for, I can't remember what the other one was, but it's something of value. And why 30%? Simply because it suits the 2030 target. You know, we know that many natural environmental organizations suggest at least 50% of the planet's surface needs to be protected for nature in order for the ecosystems to have the integrity to protect us from climate change. So there's that point. The other point is that it could be 100% of the country which is protected or designated as a national landscape by its very nature. If it's within the country and it's a landscape, it's going to be a national landscape. But if we protect 100% of the land, it's the quality of that land and it's the quality of the protection. If you look at national parks in the US, and this has been assessed by the United Nations, the quality as far as nature protection is concerned is far higher than the quality of nature protection in our national parks and AONBs. But it's just simply obvious if you visit one and then visit another. But it's that, and you know, taking the philosophical point as well, it's about the way this is looked at is in nature being useful to us in either an economic way or in the ecosystem services they provide. And it's not really about that. It's about nature's right to exist. And if we look at the last year in our own AONB and look at the natural history and the biodiversity, we recognise that we've lost the bullace, or the miller's thumb, which is a key aquatic indicator of water quality. This is in the lower Wye Valley. We've lost the white-clawed crayfish. Eels and elvers are almost gone. Water crowfoot is almost gone. Dippers are gone. All invertebrates of freshwater aquatics are declining, such that the swallows and the swifts and the swallows mainly, but also the house martins and sand martins are not going to be able to support, take that as a food source before they migrate. So we won't see those clouds of swallows coming down onto the Wye anymore. Water voles are no longer in the Wye, lower Wye. And then iconic, the lack of breeding swans last year. In fact, swans dying last summer at a rate of 2 per week, simply because they were starving, because they didn't have the nutrients that they usually depend on, and they had to go to alternative food sources which weren't good enough. That's the quality of the quality of how we protect our national landscapes, or our AONBs, is absolutely vital. And so I really do think that we need to strongly rebut the government's if it's an opportunity to make our AONBs and protected landscapes better, more biodiverse and better connected, then this government's response falls far short. The Glover Review was ambitious, and we need to support that ambition, come what may. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Gosh, some points to take in there. Thank you very much. Colin, yes, over to you, Colin. Thank you.
Well, again, I go along to a major extent with what Chris has just said there. I mean, wearing another hat, I'm sure a number of you in the room know that I was involved for nearly 15 years in trying to press the case for an AONB in the Forest of Dean. Now, I was therefore greatly dismayed when, in spite of what was in the Glover report, we got the response of the government. And indeed, to date, I have seen no justification, real justification, for why the candidates which came out of the response, what was the real basis for them being made the principal candidates? There's been no document produced justifying how that pecking order was arrived at. And I'm worried about how much of the so-called preserving our countryside and preserving our national identity and all the rest of it goes on behind closed doors without being accountable in the open arena. Now, having said that, we have now got the opportunity to move forward a little bit and hopefully more than a little bit with the All England assessment for new landscape designations. And I think it's absolutely essential that the Wye Valley JAC, along with the Forest of Dean District Council and Herefordshire as well, that we actually push as hard as we can on this business, because for a start, we do not want this country to develop into nothing more than a series of little oases, which we call, marvellous areas of the country. But we all know that until they are actually protected, the risk to those areas is increasing as the days go by. And they won't be there to protect because they will have been consumed in this urbanitis engagement that goes on in this country in the 21st century, and it of course started in the 20th century. So I think it's absolutely essential that as far as Wye Valley is, JAC is concerned, that we respond as robustly as possible to this as we can. Andrew, have you got any timescales on this one that you're thinking about?
As I said, I don't know exactly what the timescale is on both the sort of LUC Gillespie's commission or the sort of the broader Natural England programme. I'm more than happy to let people know as soon as I find out. As I said, I've party to a workshop in a week or so's time, and I can certainly raise that and seek clarification on that, and and let people know. I mean, as I said, I think it's a major piece of work, and it needs to be done slowly and carefully, but also it needs to have some clear framework and clear outcomes, so people know when to feed in a timely fashion and what's what to expect when, because it's difficult to know when or what is going to be announced when, and it obviously then falls into a political arena anyway, which has its own impacts on these sort of initiatives.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Andrew. Chris, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. When I see the Natural England Strategic Landscape Mapping Assessment, it reminds me that a strategy is not a plan is not an action, and an action is not an outcome. And despite our best of intentions, that's the truth. And whilst they're mapping, wildlife is just dying. And by the time they finish with their mapping assessment, there won't be anything left.
True.
Sorry about that.
I hope you're proved wrong on that point. I really, really do. Right, can we just, unless there's any other comments? I see, Ashley, you've still got your hand up, but I imagine that's an old hand. Do we welcome the initiation of Natural England's new landscape designation programme and note 3, existing local requests for AONB designation and/or extension? Thank you very much. Right, and thank you, Liz, for attending.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye. We move on then, members, to item 9, which is the Wye Valley AONB Villages Stage 3 report. Andrew, thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Richard Gething here. Unfortunately, British Telecom have recently chopped my landline, and I'm now telephone via broadband, and I'm breaking up, and I can only hear very little of what's going on. So I think it's probably best if I leave the meeting. Sorry about that.
That's a real shame. Hope things will improve.
Hopefully, and hope to see you all on the 4th of July, face to face.
Yes, in person, hopefully. Well,
okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, off you go, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay. Right. So this is a piece of work that's been undertaken by Arup on the Welsh side, so in Monmouthshire, and Arup have been consulting with primarily with 4 community councils and with Monmouthshire County Council and the ward members and various officers, including myself, and drawing together proposals and ideas and bringing their own professional expertise on the on the area, and it's been probably the more drawn out process than we'd originally hoped, but and I've obviously reported on various stages as that has progressed over the last 12, 18 months. The stage 3 report has now been published, and I inserted the link into the reports, the JAC report, to access the stage 3 report. It's now also available on the Monmouthshire County Council website, which won't go down on the 9th of March. So I will circulate a link to that so people can look at it at their leisure if they haven't seen it already. And the report outlines looks at a number of sort of concepts and perspectives in the Monmouthshire part of the AONB, and looks at each village in turn, and comes up with a sort of action plan for each village and for the area as a whole. And the one of the sort of quick win initiatives out of this is that we're now looking at the village signage, the entrance signage, gateway signs to the villages, and looking to refresh them and give them a greater sense of coherence in the context of the AONB in the lower Wye Valley. But there's a huge amount of information within the report. It's still very aspirational, and there's further work to be done in drilling down into each of the opportunities in the action plan. But there will be a number of things progressing over the coming weeks, months and years out of this. And of course, I don't know whether members are aware, so on the English side, but 20 mile an hour, the standard village 30 mile an hour speed limit is dropping to 20 miles an hour in Wales in over the coming I think couple of years will be rolled out. So that'll be something else that will be affecting the villages and helping to address what was an initial impetus for this study, which was the vehicle speeds through some of the villages. So we're seeking for the community councils to endorse this plan, and similarly feel it's appropriate for the JAC to endorse this stage 3 report, and then we will work with the community councils and Monmouthshire County Council to progress its implementation. So yeah, there it is for members. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we should forget the substantial amount of SDF funding that went into this, and also the contribution from Monmouthshire and the community councils towards this ARAP programme. Thank you very much. Any members wish to speak? Yes, David. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. It won't surprise you, and given our history on roads in the Wye Valley, etc., that it's a good plan as so far as it goes. However, until it is actually takes on board the English side of the A466 and the Wye Valley, it's not going to be that effective. And if I am completely honest, my view is that Monmouthshire County Council would be far better have its resources spent on resurfacing the Wye Bridge in Monmouth, so that you don't have your car destroyed every time you drive across it. Because quite frankly, Monmouthshire highways need to get to the Wye Bridge in Monmouth mended before they start worrying about other roads around the Wye Valley. It's now becoming almost impassable, with the result that people are now driving on the wrong side of the road to actually ensure that their axles don't get broken. I think they need their priorities sorted rather strongly and rather quickly, if I'm honest. Yes, it's great. I mean, Monmouthshire highways do need, and have always needed, as have Gloucestershire, some education on how to divert traffic when there is a closure, as Anne knows, that they're just not very good at diverting traffic along sensible routes. Yeah, as far as it goes, it's a good scheme, but I look forward to when it is expanded to the entirety of the Wye Valley.
David, I do miss those meetings that we had with community councils. I really think it was such a good idea. I don't know why it fizzled out, but it was so good at the time. Thank you for those comments. And there's another closure this weekend between the 12th and the 14th along the Wye Valley Road in the middle of Tinton, actually. But hopefully that won't be as long as they expect it to be. Hopefully, but
it has got better since we used to meet.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, who wouldn't want to support something sustainable, like sustainable transport, which connects isolated villages and their members and their inhabitants? We would, you know, from our side, we would support that. We would also want to look at the delivery and benefit from its success, so that we could copy it on our side to make it integral to the whole of the AONB, so that we've got sustainable transport. In our local plan, acknowledging the climate emergency, we've actually put in at the top, reducing the need to travel in the first place. And where that applies to isolated communities is in having some sort of resource or facility which caters for 90% or 80% of the villagers, you know, needs. So a local shop, a village shop, which doubles up as a post office or whatever, an information centre, would help in just reducing the need to travel in the first place. Acknowledging also that we are in a rural landscape, and you know, most of us need to have a car to get around because public transport is non-existent. But where that public transport could be delivered, as is in this scheme, that it be as sustainable as possible. Hopefully not diesel, or at least looking to become electric or even hydrogen powered in the future. But absolutely support it, and just wish we had the foresight to include a 20s plenty you know, campaign on our side. But I try to push it through, but Gloucestershire County Council Cabinet were unbudgeable, and they decided not to go with it. It is quite an inspiration, actually, when I cross the Brockway Bridge or the Bigswear Bridge, to go onto the Welsh roads and to find that 20 miles per hour is sufficient. It saves lives, makes it much more safe. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you for those kind comments. It hasn't been without its problems, I have to say, but thank you very much indeed for those kind words. It is appreciated. Thank you. Right, Andrew, I think we've agreed to endorse the Wye Valley plan, the AONB Villages plan, and encourage respective community councils to adopt the plan as well. Thank you very much. Nobody else wants to speak on this item, I don't believe.
The only thing, Chair, if I may, is to say if I was able to draw in the resources to have done this on the English side simultaneously as the Welsh side, I obviously would have done. But it's one of the joys of cross-border living, as we all know in this area, that can't always get everything right on both sides of the river at once. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 10, the Wye Valley NAC nominee, which I think it's been agreed basically that Andrew, you would take up this position again unless there's any other people wishing to do this, or any other suggestions. But I think if we could move, probably, unless I can't see any hands going up, that we should move that the JAC nominates the Wye Valley AONB manager, Andrew Blake, to continue to represent the Wye Valley AONB partnership on the Wye ANC, NAC. Everybody in agreement? Please show. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Andrew, you're there again. Thank you very much for all the work that you've done so far and are going to do in the future. Thank you. Right, item 11, farming in protected landscapes. There's an update here, I think, Andrew, that you have for us. Thank you.
Yes, it's really just to let members know how the farming in protected landscapes programme has gone so far. We're basically spent up for this our allocation for this financial year, which ended up at around £100,000. And I attached the terms of reference and the membership of the assessment panel that is assessing those applications, and then we have just under £220,000 next year and the year after to allocate for farmers and landowners on the English side of the Wye. And as I mentioned earlier as well, we're currently recruiting, or the advert has just gone out for a farming and protected landscapes officer to manage that for us. So that'll be effectively a 2-year post. So yes, if anyone knows anyone who might be interested in that job, then do let me know. It should be being advertised through the Herefordshire Rural Hub and Countryside Job Services and Environment Jobs, and we'll be promoting it through social media and things. So yes, it's just asking the JAC to endorse those allocations, and we will keep you informed as the scheme progresses over the next 2 years. Thank you, Chair.
Are you in agreement, members? Are you content with that? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to item 13 then, the Wye Valley River Festival update, please, Andrew.
Yeah, this is, oh, hang on, we've skipped one, have we?
Oh.
Have we?
I've got my papers in the wrong order. Yeah, no, we've got the
12.
joint
Item
statement
12.
on historic environment.
Oh, yes, yes. Carry on. Andrew.
This is another initiative from the National Association for AONBs, and again working in England with Historic England on there used to be an accord with what was then English Heritage and the National Association, and this is effectively a revitalisation of it, and the National Association has asked that each AONB partnership endorses this new joint statement. So the joint statement is attached, and it just outlines what each sort of party, the individual AONBs, Historic England and the National Association agrees to do, which we have already largely done in terms of incorporating in the AONB management plan, incorporating the historic environment, and obviously we've done much work in the past through overlooking the Wye and things like that for the area. So yes, just asking members to endorse this joint statement. Thank you, Chair.
David, I think you were first. David, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I noticed that everything refers to Historic England and wonder what is Cadw part of this as well, and if not, what happens in Monmouthshire?
No, I mean, that's a good point, because the original or the previous accord was jointly with Cadw and English Heritage. I'm not sure why Wales is separated in this instance, but certainly I sit on there's a historic environment sort of working group, which is the National Parks and AONBs and Cadw, and actually the Royal Commission and Natural Resources Wales, and we tend to meet annually at least, and so there is good work going on in Wales, but I'm not quite sure what the politics or logistics and practicalities of why this was just done as an English agreement and not a British one, as it were. Yeah, I can make further inquiries and come back with some background on that if you'd like.
Good point, David. Thank you for that. Chris?
Thank you, Anne. Yes, as far as I can see, one of the things that's missing from this is the inclusion of heritage and the historic environment and its protection in the planning system, particularly with planning applications, where, for instance, in the Forest of Dean, as a result of the Foresters Forest Landscape Partnership Scheme, we identified the need for a consultant, advisor, whatever you want to call them, who could look at planning applications and identify where particular harm may be done to the cultural as well as the historic environment in those places. At the moment, we do have a conservation advisor, but they are restricted to areas of conservation in villages and historic villages, and listed buildings, grade 2 or grade 1, and that often leaves a lot out. You know, that we've had a process of village character assessment or parish character assessments, that people identify parts of their historic heritage which don't apply, you know, don't have grade listing or are necessarily in conservation areas, but they are a critical part of the cultural heritage which those people enjoy. And it's one of the things that we would want is that, although the areas of collaboration are great in the terms of reference, and I know this might require an investment, but to have somebody sitting in the planning departments of all the major councils that are in the AONB to just advise or be called upon when a planning application, or maybe to identify planning applications which might detract from the historic and cultural heritage of the area. It's very important. Certainly, I know from the Forest of Dean, you know, and my experience as chairing the Foresters Forest, that the cultural and historic element of our heritage is vital. It tells us who we are. It gives us a sort of identity, a unique identity upon which we can grow and develop for future generations. So it's just that. Whether you probably can't add it in, but if you can make note of it, that somebody in all of the planning departments, not full time, but to be called upon when, or to have oversight of planning applications that might damage or harm the historic and cultural heritage of the area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'd all agree with that in Yolanda. I'm sure you all agree. Thank you very much, Chris, for raising this, and I hope it's been noted and put in there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? I can't see any more hands. Thank you. So we've the recommendations are to endorse the joint statement of the historic environment and AONBs. Thank you very much. Right, now we're on to the Wye Valley River Festival update. Andrew, thank you.
Yes, the So I'm very pleased to say that the Wye Valley River Festival Community Interest Company that's taken over the organisation and running of the festival has got sufficient funding and is set up and is working hard on delivering a festival in May. They've gone for the end of May and into early June. And yes, there are various reasons for that, not least to give them a few more weeks to help organise the festival, because obviously they haven't had the full 2 years that we have in the past to prepare for each festival. But they've got the funding and resources to employ sufficient members of staff and contract in others in support. So they've got a good team building up, both for the management and production of the festival and community engagement and community outreach. The program itself is forming, so I will obviously won't be able to report back until the next meeting, by which time the festival will have been. I will obviously report back on achievements then, but I will let everyone know as soon as there's more sort of promotion and information available. But yeah, we're very pleased, having run 4 festivals and having helped establish the CIC and see it be so successful with funding and able to deliver a festival. So we wish it well and look forward to the antics and the celebrations and the art that it will bring to the Wye Valley at the end of May and early June.
Sounds really good. Thank you, Andrew. Chris.
Thank you. The timing is interesting because I wonder whether the idea is to complement the Queen's Jubilee celebrations, which occur right in the middle of that. I would like to think that would be the case, and I suppose some sensitive preparations would enable that to happen, because it would be a shame if you know the festival was subsumed by the Queen's Jubilee and street parties and things without, you know, as a result of that. I'm all in favour of the Queen's Jubilee. I think she's done a brilliant job, as everybody else would do. But if it can be complementary to that, or that the Queen's what was it called, the Green Canopy project, that might, you know, allude into the human nature theme of the festival. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, yes. Would you like to come in, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yes, basically to congratulate the team and the AONB team, Andrew particularly, for getting this far. To have ready a fund of such 300,000. Was it 300,000? Yes. Ready to go. Then I think that's marvelous. Well done. We look forward to it.
Here. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Perhaps you pass those comments on to the CIC and say that we'll be here to encourage them on their way. Thank you.
Yep, they're all just leaving. Actually, they've just finished their meeting now. But yes, it's a you know, the full credit to them for securing that. We obviously take some of the credit for laying the foundations for that, but yeah, it's very exciting. It was obviously a difficult decision to make on pitching the date, because there are advantages and disadvantages to being alongside, obviously, significant national celebrations, but it also does allow to make use of a lot of infrastructure that will be in place. For instance, in Redbrook, there will be marquees down on the Millennium Green for the full week that will be effectively sitting empty for several days. And so the River Festival, working with Redbrook community to make use of that space in between other celebrations, and yeah, certainly they're working very closely with various communities to make sure that they're either dovetailing or separating celebrations or activities and events, and yeah, working with or around the other community activities. So I think it will definitely embellish and enhance that sort of half-term week and extended bank holiday, etc.
Thank you. David?
I just wanted to endorse what Andrew said. I mean, the River Festival has a long history of good working relationships with Redbrook Village and the stuff that goes on in Redbrook, be it on the bridge or along the bridge or on the Millennium Green. And yes, we have a vast number, well, not a vast number, but 5 or 6 village marquees, which they will be very, very welcome to use, I would imagine.
That's great. Thank you, David. Any other contributions? I can't see any. Thank you very much. The next items are for information, I believe. Item 14 and 15 are for noting of information only, unless you want to come in, Andrew, on either of those items.
Yeah, I mean, the item 14 is really in response to the questions that were raised at the previous meeting by the Councillor Forrest of Forest of Dean District Council, and was questioning the approach to natural capital in the management plan. So I've just set out the context and what the management plan actually says in relation to natural capital, and would certainly accept that natural capital is in some sectors a controversial concept, but it is part of government policy. And but we certainly, the management plan takes a balanced view of it, and the purpose of the AONB is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, as we all well know, and natural capital is just a tool or an approach that sits within that context. So there's no intention or ability for natural capital to have any overriding principle in terms of the management plan and in terms of natural beauty. So the approach is a very balanced, nuanced one, and working at a landscape scale. But in terms of the English side, natural capital, as I said, is a policy instrument of government. It is not at all on the Welsh side, and different perspective is used in Wales. So I just thought it helpful to outline the position and actually quote the management plan where it's referencing natural capital and its context within the management plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Andrew. I'm really glad that you've expanded on those questions. They are responses. They don't. They allude to the concerns that many members have about putting a value on nature. My feeling, my instinct is that we ought to keep an eye on this, just in case the land beneath our feet is sold away from us. And it particularly with the advent of not only a carbon tax, but carbon offsetting and biodiversity net gain. These are two principles which rely on valuing natural capital. And the result is that nature is undervalued because it has many, many benefits which cannot be monetized. And I'm really grateful that you've put the definition of beauty with the neuroscience evidence in the response. That is superb. But I think this is something we need to keep a watching brief on. And I don't want to be political, but particularly with this government, with its ambitions to derive some economic benefit from the selling and trading of carbon emissions as we go forward. I did receive a critique from somebody who's in the associated with the IPCC, whose report came out last week, which was quite damning, that actually biodiversity offsetting, carbon offsetting is becoming increasingly redundant, simply because we are by trying to pay off the continued use of fossil fuels, burning fossil fuels, we are destroying the biosphere, which is supposed to be storing the carbon. So as soon as we plant the trees, they'll be burnt by wildfires and temperature increases and drought, which will negate the biodiversity offset in the first place. So, you know, biodiversity offsetting, for instance, the expansion of an airport or the road building program is really becoming untenable. But thank you for this. It's really good. I'm hoping you've sent it to Councillor Forrester, or do so when you can. And my advice and my instinct is to keep a watching brief on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colin, would you like to come in?
Yes, I'm reminded of a book which was written by Tony Juniper, who of course now chairs Natural England, and the book was entitled "What Did Nature Ever Do for Us?" And he, in the book, actually identified the idea of natural capital, because yes, everything, when you get down to it, has got a value to society. You might not be able to measure it accurately, but nevertheless it has got a value. What worries me, though, is whether behind this there is still this attitude by certain persons in Westminster that natural capital equals a trading commodity. And I don't like the thought of that at all, because that could be very much against the well-being of society as a whole, and in particular those persons who are affected in that particular area, that now becomes the trading commodity. So I think you answered Tom Porris's questions very well. I think it's an excellent response, but I think we all need to perhaps keep a somewhat of a watching brief on what's going on around us.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you.
Good. Chair, if I could just add a couple of other points. I mean, I certainly appreciate the concerns in the Forest of Dean with such large areas of state forestry as well, which, we have a fair amount of Forestry England and also NRW woodland on the Welsh side. but yes, a lot of the land is already private in the AONBs, so that's let's say a lesser concern or consideration. But I would completely agree with the concerns, the healthy scepticism about natural capital being used as a sort of a policy tool and too heavily, and yes, understanding the value of things, but realizing that things of value don't always have a price, and yeah, that as I'd say in the report, there's certainly many in the environmental sector and in AONBs as well that are have that watching brief on the development of this, and yeah, there is value in the concept, but it's also there are very many risks if it's taken too literally or too far. So we'll keep an eye on it, certainly.
Thank you. Any other contributions to this report? Thank you very much. Thank you. So moving on to the AONB unit progress report and updates, Andrew.
Yeah, I just provide a few updates on areas of work over the last few months, and probably draw people's attention to the final item. I think everyone will be aware that Sarah Sawyer left the AONB unit in December after 13 years, and so yeah, very sorry to see her go, wishing her all the best for the future, and it again has impacted on our capacity over the last few months, including our ability to run the volunteers and youth rangers, but I would hope that all members would also wish Sarah well and thank her for all the work over the years, and yeah, fantastic achievements that she did for us and for the AONB. Yeah, and the other items are there if anyone wants to ask any questions now or at any time, please do.
I think we'd all agree with you that Sarah Sawyer needs to be congratulated on all the work that she's done. It just seems a long time ago now that she's left, and appreciate all the work, particularly with the funding and meeting people around in the Wye Valley area. Thank you very much. Would you pass that on to her, please?
Certainly.
Thank you. Any other contributions? I do miss seeing people in person, Andrew. I find it a bit difficult. I think there's lots of people that we can't actually see on the screen, and Ashley and others, and thank you for attending this meeting today. Thank you. A few other thank yous. Yes, Yolande. Sorry. Come in.
Yeah, sorry, Anne. I was just wondering, Andrew, is I'm not sure if I've missed it in the report, but is the Wye Valley AONB doing a heritage project with Ruth Coulthard from Brecon Beacons, or have I got that wrong? I thought she was working with Wye Valley AONB unit on heritage project.
Ruth works for Monmouthshire now. Yeah, Matthew, perhaps you can elaborate on Ruth's whereabouts. Ruth's whereabouts.
Yes, yeah. Ruth is works for us. She's our heritage strategy project officer. So we are preparing a heritage strategy with support from the Heritage Fund, but it's primarily for the assets that Mon Life. So it's a Mon Life heritage strategy. So it's for the assets that Mon Life manages predominantly. So it includes Tinton Old Station, Abbey Tinton Furnace in the Ngiddy Valley, Lower Wye Works in the Ngiddy Valley. So there's some overlap more generally, but it's specifically around organisational sort of resilience and staff training, etc., in terms of the assets that we currently manage, but with a wider focus in terms of trying to encourage visitors to spread out more widely across. So it's, you know, it's although that's his focus, it's not entirely inward looking. It's got a sort of external looking element to it as well.
Great,
Thank you
you,
for that,
Matthew.
Thank you for raising that, Yolande. Chris.
Thank you. Sorry, last point that we've got in the plan the fact that we were lobbying government for more resources to tackle the state of the Wye and the pollution of the Wye. What I would like to say to acknowledge is that we really must make that not a priority, but we must continue to do that in a much more proactive way. We know that you know, the Friends of the Lower Wye and the Save the Wye team, as it were, have got 600 citizen scientists monitoring water quality, particularly in the Lower Wye. And what they found is that the testing of water quality is so infrequent by the statutory bodies that they are missing pollution incidents every week, every month. If you look at the results of the phosphate analysis, the phosphate figures have exceeded the threshold, the maximum threshold, every week for the last 3 months, every week at all the stations tested. And that is a cause of great concern. We've had the first algal bloom in February in the Llanidlos reservoir, and we really do need to address this. It's you know, I'm slightly concerned that the phosphate stripping trials run by the EA and Natural Resources Wales have proved successful in reducing that phosphate legacy, but the trials have been discontinued, and no reason why, unless it's a lack of resources. We really do need, you know, I'll just put a plea in there because it's only every 3 months that we meet. But if we're going to have another year where nature is banished from our river, which is at the heart of the AONB, then we're doing something wrong. We're not putting our duty of care into, you know, into practice. So it's just a plea that we actually make it known to government that we're not actually recovering the Wye Valley, the River Wye, and by the time we do get the resources, it'll be too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Somebody else want to speak? I have another hand somewhere. No, they've all gone down now. I may be a bit uneasy because my beekeeper husband has just come in for some stuff for the bees and brought half of them in with him as well. I'm sorry about this. So I'm a bit uneasy. He just chooses his moments, I'm afraid. Sorry, Andrew.
I just sort of update. Well, I'm sure most people are aware that well, certainly both Herefordshire MPs have been raising the state of the Wye in the Commons several times now, and we've had the Environment Minister and well, even the Prime Minister mentioning the Wye in Parliament, and I'm glad to say that there are now more resources going into the Environment Agency and Natural England to focus on the Wye. But I would endorse Chris's concerns and need for urgency, accepting that the phosphate loading is there isn't a quick fix. We need to deplete the phosphate in the soil consistently for about 15 years to be able to stabilize the system. But there's a lot that needs to be done, and I'm glad to say I have actually been invited to sit on the Nutrient Management Board now, and although again, that's lots of meetings and throughout the year, but we'll keep better abreast of what action we can take in the meantime as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Chris.
Sorry to come back on you on this, but those phosphate stripping trials suggested that for every time you do the stripping, you reduce the phosphate load by about 50%. So although you're saying 15 years, absolutely, I agree that the legacy will continue. But you know, we do need to look at the urgency, because if we have to wait 15 years for the phosphate levels to come into, you know, into beneath the maximum allowed, then we're not going to have anything left to save. Really, we do need, you know, that sense of urgency. You know, I'm grateful if you sit on the nutrient management board, and then as a more of an altruistic thought, if they're going to reduce the chicken manure that they're putting out on the fields in the Wye Valley, AONB, then please don't put it somewhere else, which you know, denatures other watercourses elsewhere in the country. Please, you know, there must be a way to better get rid of chicken poo, or use it, you know, positively without harming nature. Thank you.
Okay.
Put yourself on mute, Anne.
Oh, Matthew Price, I want Matthew.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the comments there. I mean, poultry manure and all other animal manures, there's sort of two counter narratives. So on the one hand, farmers are being encouraged to engage in regenerative agriculture and increase soil organic matter content, which is best achieved through using animal manures. And there are, not very far from the Wye Valley catchment, soils with very, very low phosphate indices, whereby they're currently using artificial phosphate, which, by the way, the price of which has gone absolutely through the roof with what's going on in the world at the moment. So in actual fact, the industry are already looking at exporting surplus poultry manures to agricultural uses, and it isn't going to do terrible things to the environment, I assure you, as long as they're applied in accordance with all of the rules that DEFRA set out for the protection of water and soils. So it is actually a very valuable resource. And as I say, you haven't got to go very far to find some soils that are very, very low in phosphate indices, and farmers will be very grateful for that. So I'd like to sort of just counter the narrative that animal manures are somehow inherently negative to the environment, when in actual fact they can be of great benefit as well.
You're on mute again, Anne.
Are there any other contributions, please? Thank you for that, Matthew. Meanwhile, somebody else wants to speak, I believe. Could you please? Yes, Bridget, I thought it was you. Sorry, I'd forgotten about you. Thank you, Bridget.
You're also
on mute.
Don't know if I'm allowed to speak. I'm a member of the public, so I did want to attend the meeting today for various reasons. But I could just speak to your last comment about the state of the River Wye, if I could, just very quickly to tell you. I am a citizen scientist, a volunteer doing water sampling measurements, have been doing since about last autumn. And I have literally just this last week received a letter, a long letter has been sent to Rebecca Powell, the MP. I think she visited the Wye catchment area, didn't she, recently? So there's River Action have sent a lengthy letter to her with a range of points here, obviously too much to talk about at the meeting now, but it's been signed, if you like, by about nearly 24 groups, interested groups. So that has happened. I don't know if it's in the public domain, actually, this letter or not, but it's come via the CPRE to me. So yeah, that has happened. I guess I don't know if you feed into River Action or any of this, that umbrella group that is written on this matter. So, but it does need to be kept in the, very visible in the public domain, really. That's right.
I can assure you that it is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bridget, for your part of taking part. Thank you. Andrew, did you want to come back then or not? No?
I was just going to ask Bridget if she's able to forward a copy of that letter to me. That'd be useful to see. Can't say I've seen that one. I am party to some comments and letters and circulations, but I'm not aware of that one, certainly.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't see why not. I'm looking down the list. A lot of the wildlife trusts have contributed, a lot of the fishing bodies, Friends of the Lower Wye, Friends of the Upper Wye. I'm sure it's public domain type stuff, so certainly I can do that, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll draw the meeting to a close now, but thank you very much for those comments, Bridget. Some of us are not sure if we will be coming back again next time because we've got elections in Monmouthshire. Monmouthshire County Council elections are taking place on May the 5th. So thank you, Councillor Christopher Edwards, Councillor Matt Feekins and Councillor Malcolm Lane for attending today. And and myself, we're not sure if we will be coming back or not. But there we are. That's the situation in the other counties. They haven't got elections. They've already had theirs a couple of years ago. I just want to say something about Ukraine. Evidently tonight at 7 o'clock UK times, the bells of churches all over Europe will ring. We're asked to turn off our lights in our homes at 7 o'clock to show Putin that we'd rather stay in the dark than buy his gasoline and his oil. It's a protest that will take place all over Europe and simultaneously in the UK at 7 o'clock. I thought it would be remiss of me not to mention this to you today, as there's quite a few of us represented here, and I'm sure you've got churches in your locality, and it would be good if the same thing happened around this area. Thank you very much. I don't want to end on a sad note, but we're obviously remembering all the people in Ukraine at the present time and all the countries surrounding Ukraine and all the help that's been given there. They're in our thoughts, I'm sure, every day and every moment of the day that we can have a blank moment. Thank you very much. Yolande.
Yeah,
Yes.
just to add to that, that's quite timely because I wanted to say congratulations to the Wye Valley Society, which actually got a grant for its Dark Skies project. So, so that's an appropriate. So that's a happy ending with the Dark
Good,
Skies.
Yolande. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay,
I didn't want to end
thanks.
it on a dismal note, but I'm sure our thoughts are with the people on the other side of Europe. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Bridget, you wanted to come back in again, did you? Or is that an old hand? I've got one hand up and I'm not sure whose that is.
I think that might be legacy
An old
hand
hand from Bridget. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, not to worry. Do come back again. You're always welcome. Thank you. I'll close the meeting now. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Richard, for taking the notes. A laborious task taking in the minutes of this meeting, but thank you.
Oh, Dave Wheeler is also an old hand. No, it's not an old hand.
No. Can I just ask, how will we know whether it's virtual or in Colford?
We will be making that decision about a month or so in advance, and we have the technical officers working party the month previous. So, yeah, early June we will be gauging what the socio-political situation is, and yeah, so by mid-June we should be able to get a definitive decision on the venue or the format.
Okay, that's fantastic, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the meeting now, and thank you very much for all your attendance and all your contributions today. Bye.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank
Bye.
Bye.